All right, this demo is just for finishing up your panoramic composition and submitting it. So this was the first project that we've worked on where we actually needed to save a process image. And that's because we learned how to bring our different exposures, at least 5 different exposures, into Photoshop and tile them together and merge the seams as best we could. Whether you did it by hand or whether you did it by photo merging using collage within Photoshop. And at that point, I wanted you to save it with the white space around it, because this is how you're going to submit your raw exposures for this project. And they are raw exposures because these are my actual exposures at the scene, so without any color alterations, right? The reason we needed to save that while we were working is because the next step is to find our composition within this using the cropping tool. And that's a very creative decision. You get to make your choices based on what you keep in the frame. So my cropped Photoshop file is here. And you can see that I decided to leave off a lot. I didn't want the trash can. I didn't want even this tree. Instead, I liked this path and these hills and these rocks, and I wanted all of that to come through. So I made my decision there. So that raw JPEG, that's the first thing we're going to submit. So you want to make sure that you have that. And I'm going to go ahead and save it to the desktop. And I'm calling it Carl Assignment 5 Raw Exposures as a JPEG. Now for all of these, you want to shrink their quality so that they're less than 5 megabytes. Otherwise, they just get huge. Okay. And then that's on the desktop. Sometimes JPEGs will save without the tag at the end. And if that happens, I just put it back in, .jpg. But you want to make sure it's a JPEG. Now I can close that and I can focus on this Photoshop file. This is just reviewing to make sure you know where all of the different things you're submitting comes from. So now that I have my cropped Photoshop file, I am going to save that before I do any color processing. And I save that first as a Photoshop file. And then I am going to flatten it so it's all one image. And then I am going to save that flattened one as a TIFF file. So my cropped, Carl Assignment 5 cropped, I am going to save to my desktop as a TIFF file after I've saved it as a Photoshop. The Photoshop one has all of the different layers. The TIFF is flattened. And we always save with LZW compression. The LZW compression saves space. Now I want to save that flattened TIFF file that's cropped also as a JPEG. That's the second thing I'm going to upload for this assignment. And I want to make sure that it's less than 5 megabytes. So now I have 2 things on the desktop. I have my uncropped raw exposures and I have my cropped raw exposures. Okay, now I have my TIFF file. And what I want to do is run actions on it. So I go to Actions. If you don't see Actions, go up to Window and click next to Actions. And as long as they haven't been tampered with, and students make mistakes sometimes, and that's why I don't like to have my actions out in the open. I like to have them hidden on this bar because they're like VHS tapes. So each folder is like a shelf of VHS tapes. So I'm going to go to Carl's Customized Effects and open up that folder and show me the shelf of VHS tapes. But I do not want to go inside the tape and start clicking and moving these things around because that's the programming of each action. Instead, I just want to click on it, selecting the tape, and then press play. It will only work if you have a flattened image. And you should only have one thing open in Photoshop for multiple actions like this one. So I just press play. It will run through all of them. And this is our post-processing. Now, of course, you can also do your own overall image adjustments. You can play with levels, you can play with color balance, you can play with saturation. But what I like about this is it takes a raw exposure and it pushes it in lots of different directions. So you get a sense as the creative photographer of what the potential is for your photo. Now, in order to see all the options, I go to Window, Arrange, Float All in Windows, just to unnest all these different tabs. And then I hit F9 to see them all, and I immediately know I don't want some. So I don't want the black and white, I don't save it. I know I don't want this one, the sepia, don't save it. And then others that just look dull, I know I don't want this one. I know this one is too strange for my taste. I know that one's too contrasted. And so on and so on. I know this one's too bright. And you can also just go in layer by layer and decide which ones are interesting. So this one, no, but this one, yes. There's something I like about that, so I'm going to minimize it. This one, no. This one, yes. This one, yes. This one, no. This one, yes. This one, no. Okay, until I get back to my original. And then the ones I have minimized, I have 4 minimized. I can open those up. And then I want to hit F9 and see if any of them are too similar. And these two are pretty similar. The cross-processing and the Polaroid. That's not always true, but for this photo, and in this case, I like the Polaroid filter better. Right? So now I need to merge these all into one photo. And the way I do that is I go to the image and I flatten it. So not all of them have multiple layers, but the ones that do, I always want to check by going to Layer, Flatten Image, and then select all, Command A, Command C to copy, and then I go to my original, and then Command V to paste it on top of my original photo. And then I can close those action-generated files because I don't need them anymore. And when they're on top of my original photo, I can decide how much I want to use what's in them by blending them in with opacity. And this is instant control of post-processing, right? All of the actions are set to work on pretty average exposures, so they tend to overdo things. So I don't want them at 100% opacity. But I want to know, okay, that's at 100%, that's at 0%. Maybe what I want is about there, somewhere in between. And then I can go to another photo or another action output file. Make sure it's flattened. This one is already flattened. And because it's already flattened, when I go to Layer, Flatten Image, that won't be an option. I select all, Command A, I copy, Command C, and I paste it on top of my original, Command V. And I don't need that anymore, so I can close it. And then I blend it in with opacity. So this one's all about the deep blue shadows, and I actually want that underneath my other one. It just helps deepen them a little bit. And then the last, usually I'll use this high pass texture fill as my last to bring focus in. But it's a little too strong on this, so I'm going to blend that in as well. And it's already a flat image, so I'm not able to flatten it anymore. Command A to select it all, Command C to copy, Command V to paste, and then don't save it. Okay, now I want to put that one on the very top, and then I can blend it in, but I use the high pass fill filler a little bit differently. At 100%, it's too sharp. And I don't like its dull colors. But if I put it at 100% and then I blend it like a double exposure using pin light, it will bring a lot of that sharp focus through. And you can try others as well, like soft light, that brings it through a lot sharper but a little bit darker. Overlay will overdo everything. So pin light's much more subtle. And you can just see it's a little effect in the highlights, like around the garbage can. It sharpens it up. And that way it doesn't change the colors, it just helps sharpen some of your edges where you want things in focus. All right, so if I say that that's now my final project, I save that as my TIFF to the desktop, replacing the one before, because this one has my original photo, which is cropped and flattened with all of these different color options stacked on top, and that's what we can use to print. And then I'm also going to save it as my final processed assignment. And that I save as a JPEG because that's what I'm going to upload. Again, you want to make sure it's not more than 5 megabytes. All right, so now I have my JPEGs on the desktop. These are the 3 things you will submit for your panorama project. First, your raw exposures with the borders showing of all the different exposures you took with white behind. Then your cropped panoramic, where you make the creative decision of where the borders should be. And then your color processed panoramic. And I will upload those quickly, and I will label them in the right way so that they show up in the right order. Using Firefox, going to Photobucket. And remember, you can access Photobucket from home if you ever need to resubmit. I go to the library. I go to Photo Assignment 5. And once I'm in the folder, I click on Upload here. And I can move those JPEGs in. And why I like to upload this way is it allows me to title each photo right away. If you leave them larger than 5 megabytes, they will come in, but they'll take a long time. So that's why we want to take the quality of our JPEGs down. It's like rounding a number up. Okay, now I'm just seeing a little fragment of each panorama, but I can see already that this would be Carl 1 because it has the white space around it and the edges. I can see that this one will be Carl 2 because that's without any color processing, and I can see that this one will be Carl 3. And then after I've titled them, I'll see that they will load in the right order within the album. And when we view it as a slideshow for critiquing and for grading, I want to see each photo show up in this way. All right, with your name attached. That's it.